Circuit here in Qatar for the start of the final official test of MotoGP before the season gets underway here in Qatar in just over 2 weeks' time. It's Appleyard and Simon Crafar with you once again to bring you an update halfway through the opening day of this final test. And Simon, the biggest difference is we're not shouting, we're not trackside. We're giving everyone the opportunity to actually hear us for once. You'll still be able to see the bikes behind us. A great panoramic shot there of turn 1, 2, pretty much all of the first sector. It's a brilliant view, Simon, and it just sort of gives a real understanding of the technical challenge that Qatar poses.
Well, I'm not sure what everyone else sees camera-wise. It must be a bit harder, but yeah, awesome view. It's completely flat around here, so we can see every turn.
Let's start by talking some of the novelties that we've seen out there, some of the tech that has been rolled out at the start of this final test, because this is business time now, just 3 days to go. This is where the vast majority of the factories are testing their final bits to make sure that their bikes are as close to being perfect before the start of the season.
Jack, you can feel it, because from the opening hour, you know, the bikes got out there and got up to speed a little bit on their base machine. And then during that opening hour, you saw the new hardware turn up. I'll start listing some of the stuff I've seen. The KTM guys, I spotted Lecuona first, but all of them, it looks like, have got a different chassis to test, and it looks to me similar to what Pedrosa's been developing. And then fairing-wise on the KTM, it looks to me like a third fairing. Each time I see it, it seems to be getting narrower on Danny's bike, and it's filtering over, as you spotted, to Oliveira's machine.
Yeah, correct. It's almost like the KTM front fairing has been on a boot camp over the winter months, because it's got from wider to thinner, and now even thinner again. What do you think they're trying to achieve with that?
I mean, obviously, they're working on aero, like top speed. They were down here last test, you know, the last 3 days. I think they're working on that. But yeah, I mean, the other thing is, especially guys like Petrucci, their whole arm's going to be out there. There's nothing in front of their hand anymore, you know. But look, I imagine it's top speed they're working on.
And that's something they have to work on. We'll move on in a second, because KTM, obviously this year, for the first time in their MotoGP history, are going to have to deal with 7 engines rather than 9. As a result of that, do you think that is the reason we've seen maybe a drop in top speed during the opening days here? I mean, it's early days, but have they had to sort of bring those engines back in a little bit to look at sort of the bigger picture of the fact that they don't have as many to throw at it?
That's a really good question. I didn't know you were going to ask me it. It was what I asked Sebastian Rees last night in an interview, and he said he admitted he was surprised as well that the KTM was so far down the top speed sheets in the previous 3 days, but said, and I believe him because I've heard it also from crew chiefs, that don't read too much into the top speed sheets at the moment, because when you're playing with different gearing, different aero, different even rider positions, fairings, and until you get everything together, he said, it doesn't look good. But when you put all the right things together, so I think, well, basically he's expecting to be further up the sheets after these 3 days.
There'll be certainly something to keep your eye on. That interview that Simon mentioned, worth keeping an eye out on for after the flag tonight. A really great insight from Sebastian Rees, the technical director at KTM, one of the smartest blokes in the paddock.
Yeah, nice guy and very clever.
He is.
Shall we move on to another manufacturer?
Let's do it. What have we seen next? Shall we start with Suzuki? Because Suzuki in that first test were the last out the garage and the first back in the garage, but the complete opposite today. Both Rins and Mia were straight out the door early.
Test rider,
yeah, it looks like they've got a lot of work to do.
Yes, Frankie Carchidi tweeted yesterday about how much hardware they've got to get through here, and it's very hard to see from the outside because you can't see links if they're different, you know, rear suspension linkages, even chassis and swing arms, they could be different thicknesses, but it's just not visible to me. So the thing that was visible is they're testing different aero. They've got a little, another extra little addition to the aero that they've been playing with. But as you said, they've been flat out. You can tell that they're going in and out of the garage door down quickly. They're trying a lot of things.
And interestingly as well, we found out on Sunday, the final day of the test, Alex Rins had given the 2022 engine a go for the first time, so something to keep an eye out there. for the future? Aside from Suzuki, Honda, there's been a fairly dramatic day or so over at HRC, because I think both me and you have sussed out that they've chosen a direction, and it's not particularly what we might have expected.
No, so last night I first spotted that they were packing up and taking away in a crate on a forklift that 2021, we called it, totally new version chassis. So to me it points that it didn't bring something, or they're not going to let the guys run with it, just one machine, if that's all they've got. I was surprised to see the new chassis on the one side of the garage for Paul Espargaro, Alex Marquez and Taka Nakagami. And you know what chassis it was? It's the chassis that Bradl has chosen last year and been doing all his work. That's his base chassis. It looks like he's doing really good work.
He is doing exceptional work at the moment. I mean, I can look over to my right-hand side and see the timing sheets, which actually, interesting bit of news, top of them is the number 44 of Paul Espargaro on the Repsol Honda, followed by the number 20, Fabio Quartararo, then Franco Morbidelli, Maverick Vinales, and the man we want to talk about, the number 6 of Stefan Bradl, because both Paul Espargaro and Alex Marquez said on Sunday night that of all of the HRC riders, he's the man with the best rhythm, he's the man with the best pace. He looks like a serious contender by the time we get here to Qatar. Is that down to the fact that he's had more track time than everyone else? And as a result of that, what do you think other manufacturers might say about that? We don't know for certain he is going to be here in Qatar. It's obviously dependent on Marc Marquez's race against time to be fit for round one. But if he is, surely other manufacturers might not be best pleased with the amount of track time he's been able to have.
Jag, other manufacturers have already made it public that they're not pleased if Bradl races. We don't know if he's going to race or not. Nobody does. Let's hope Marc races, and there won't be any dramas, between teams or trips up to race direction. If Marc doesn't race and Stefan does ride, I think that yes, there's going to be some complaints that Stefan got to have off-season testing as a test rider and then carries on as a race rider, This is only my opinion. I think Honda have had some really bad luck with the seriousness of the injury of Marc, They haven't planned this, on purpose. Obviously, now they're having a little bit of fortune if Stefan races, that he got more time on the bike. But the only reason the other manufacturers are even complaining about this is Stefan is doing such a good job. If he was slow, nobody would care. Stefan, I think, has exceeded everyone's expectations. He's a more or less retired rider, become test rider. He's obviously very good at that, and now he's fast as well. And so all I can do is, Stefan has made his luck, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's made everyone worried about him. Hats off to Stefan, that's all I can say.
You've got to take your opportunities. Stefan has been presented one, and he's taken it with both hands. It's easy to forget that he is a world champion. He's a Moto2 world champion, and as Paul was saying on Sunday night, normally people will think as a test rider, there's maybe a bit of a downgrade, or you sort of look down on a test rider, but that's not the case with Stefan whatsoever. He's proved in the 3 days of testing that we've had here that he's a serious contender to battle for the podium, maybe even the race win.
Yeah. And just to add something else about the argument, the rules allow it if Stefan rides, and I don't think the rules need to change unless you get a manufacturer doing something like, this year Marc's going to be our test rider and Stefan our race rider, do all the winter testing and then swap them around because Stefan pretends to be hurt, And the day that sort of thing happens, the rules need to change. But at the moment, it's just a little bit of luck rolling back Honda's way after some terrible luck if Mark doesn't ride.
It is, and as much as other people might say otherwise, if HRC have the opportunity to put a fully fit Marc Marquez on the bike for round one,
They're going to do it.
Of course they will. He's an 8-time world champion. He's dominated seasons for the past decade nearly. If they've got the chance to put him on, they'll put him on. But Stefan at the moment could well be here in Qatar, could well be lining up on the grid.
Stefan has been constantly in the top 5 here, if
Yeah.
not the top 3, every day we've been here.
He's chipping away brilliantly, and I think he's surprised a lot of people. And now, as race day gets closer, starting to worry a few people as well, I think. Yep. Aside from HRC, just finally, because we've only got 30 seconds left or so, but Ducati, interestingly, sticking with that new aero. Jack Miller thinks we may well see that on the grid on race day here in Qatar, which is a pretty interesting development, I think.
Very impressive. Shows they rolled up here with something already well tested. Probably Pero. Hats off to Pero for doing some good work. One other thing before we switch off is I noticed a new front disc from Brembo.
Okay.
It looks like the same disc, but it's got cooling fins cut into it. So basically all the centre of it, not the area where the pad runs, but all the centre area, it's got slots, more surface area to duct or conduct heat away from that pad area. And I believe, speaking to the Brembo guys, that it's a development they want to make something even more serious for when we go to places like Austria.
Those high braking zones, Austria in particular, one of them. But of course, we'll be focusing all about Qatar, all about the first day of the final test of 2021, and after the flag tonight, MotoGP.com, 8:30 local time, where you can join both Neil Morrison and Lewis Sotheby. A bit of a voice break. I'm not excited. Don't miss it. MotoGP.com. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow.